The shadow at the edge of the galaxy. Humanity had spent decades scanning the stars in search of life. For generations, astronomers and explorers had hoped to find civilizations beyond the solar system, but the universe seemed silent. The thought that they might not be alone had faded into myth. And then the anomaly appeared. It began as a strange disturbance at the edge of the galaxy. Sensors picked up a sudden lack of background radiation, a void in the otherwise constant hum of cosmic energy. At first, scientists assumed it was a glitch, a momentary misread in the deep space telescopes. But the signal persisted, and soon its source became impossible to ignore. What appeared in that void was not a natural formation, not an asteroid field or a black hole. It was something entirely artificial, a single-war dreadnought, unlike any ship humanity had ever imagined. Its dimensions defied comprehension, stretching across hundreds of kilometers, a black monolith against the backdrop of distant stars. News spread across Earth and every human colony in the system. Military fleets were mobilized, but even before orders could reach the front line, reports began to arrive that made every commander's stomach turn. Ships approaching the Dreadnought experienced failures in propulsion, weapons, and communication. Systems that had functioned perfectly on Earth and in orbit were now failing, inexplicably. The Dreadnought did not fire a shot. It did not attack. It simply appeared and advanced. And as it did, human fleets found themselves paralyzed. Pilots reported a strange calm, a sense that resistance was pointless. Ships drifted in orbit without control, and attempts to override their systems ended in failure. Governments convened emergency councils. Leaders demanded answers, but the Dreadnought offered none. Its very presence was the threat. No words, no demands, no intimidation, just inevitability. Entire star systems began reporting that defensive satellites and energy grids were shutting down the moment the Dreadnought entered orbit. Humanity's most advanced technology was powerless. The realization was chilling. Humanity had detected the Empire's warship, but it was already too late. The fleets that could have challenged it were immobilized. The systems that could have warned others were silent. And the Dreadnought continued its slow, unstoppable march toward the inner planets. Scientists worked frantically to understand the technology, hypothesizing that the Dreadnought emitted a field that disrupted energy flow at a fundamental level. Communication attempts through subspace channels failed. Attempts to interfere with its trajectory were futile. Even theoretical calculations could not predict how to stop it. As the first day passed, the Dreadnought had crossed vast distances with minimal effort, leaving human forces incapacitated in its wake. Panic spread faster than the ship itself gripped the colonies, and whispers of surrender began to circulate. Humanity faced the impossible, a machine so advanced that even thinking of resistance seemed absurd. If you want to follow the next chapters and discover how humanity responded to the Dreadnought and what secrets it held, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel now, because the story is only getting more intense, and the fate of countless worlds hangs in the balance. As night fell on Earth, the Dreadnought hovered silently beyond Mars, casting a shadow across the inner planets. Humanity was frozen not by weapons, but by the terrifying certainty of its own limitations. The war had not begun, yet the Dreadnought had already won. And somewhere deep in the Empire, its creators were watching, knowing that a single ship could bend an entire civilization to its will. The countdown to humanity's next move had begun. But the question remained: could they act before it was truly too late? Or had the galaxy already passed its point of no return? Humanity's paralysis. The Dreadnought did not need to fire a single shot to claim dominance. Its mere presence in the solar system had frozen human civilization in place. The fleets that had once been humanity's pride now drifted helplessly. Engines dead, weapons unresponsive, communication lines silent. Even satellites designed to operate autonomously failed, spinning aimlessly in orbit. It was as if the ship emitted a force that denied the very act of resistance. On Earth, the news spread like wildfire. Screens across every city displayed the reports from the front lines. Entire battalions immobilized, colonies unable to respond, energy grids failing without explanation. Panic gripped governments, and emergency councils convened around the clock. Leaders spoke with urgency, but each message ended in uncertainty. No conventional defense could touch the Dreadnought. No countermeasure could override its field. Humanity was paralyzed, and the enormity of that truth sank in with a terrifying weight. Scientists worked tirelessly, poring over data from deep space telescopes and probe drones. Every theory they had about energy, propulsion, and shield seemed to fail in the face of the Dreadnought's strange interference. Physicist Dr. Lena Torres, proposed that the ship was emitting a field capable of disrupting energy flows on a quantum level, suppressing all machinery and electronics within its vicinity. Her calculations suggested that even the fastest ships in the human fleet could not escape its influence. Once they entered its zone, attempts to launch unmanned drones toward the Dreadnought ended in disaster. As each craft approached, it experienced system failures. Thrusters cut out mid-flight, navigational computers froze, and communication signals dissolved into static. The scientists watched in horror as their creations, designed to explore the farthest reaches of space, fell silent one by one. Humanity's ingenuity, for all its brilliance, was powerless against this single machine. Meanwhile, military leaders faced a profound dilemma. Every strategy to confront the Dreadnought failed before it could even be executed. Troop deployments became meaningless. Fleets scattered, unable to coordinate, their movements dictated not by commands, but by the invisible hand of the Dreadnought's suppressive field. In hours, humanity's might, the culmination of centuries of technological advancement, had been reduced to impotence. Even civilians felt the dread. Communications went dark in many areas, leaving populations isolated and fearful. Supply lines faltered, and economic systems shuddered under the pressure of uncertainty. Humans were not just facing a ship, they were facing a force that stripped them of the ability to act. It was not aggression they needed to survive. It was understanding. In the midst of this chaos, a small council of scientists and commanders gathered in the orbital command center above Earth. Dr. Torres spoke with a quiet urgency. This isn't just a weapon, this is a test. It's a demonstration of control, attacking it as we would any ship will achieve nothing. If we want to survive, we need to approach it differently. We need to understand it. Her words were met with both skepticism and hope. Some commanders could not imagine surrendering control to reason in the face of what appeared to be a threat. Yet the evidence was undeniable. No fleet, no weapon, no strategy had worked. The Dreadnought had already rewritten the rules of engagement, and humanity was learning that force alone could no longer dictate outcomes. If you want to see how humanity confronts this seemingly unstoppable force and discovers the key to survival, subscribe to my YouTube channel now, because the next chapter reveals the choices, risks, and revelations that will determine the fate of the solar system, and perhaps the entire galaxy. As night fell over Earth, the Dreadnought continued its silent, methodical advance. It moved like a shadow, unchallenged, through the inner planets. Humanity had reached a moment of reckoning, not in battle, but in thought. Survival would not come from weapons. Survival would come from understanding. Adaptation and courage in the face of the impossible had begun, and the galaxy watched in silence. Humanity's next move would decide whether they would be remembered as victims of inevitability or as the species that dared to think differently when it mattered most. The choice that saved humanity. By the time the Dreadnought reached the orbit of Venus, humanity was on the brink of despair. Fleets were immobilized, colonies in outer systems were cut off, and communication with outposts beyond Jupiter had gone silent. Yet, in the midst of this paralysis, a small group of scientists and commanders continued their desperate work. They knew that brute force would not save them. The Dreadnought's power lay not in attack but in the suppression of action itself. To survive, humanity had to think differently. Dr. Lena Torres and her team had developed a radical plan, one that went against every instinct of military strategy. They would attempt to communicate with the Dreadnought, not with weapons but with reason. Using the largest network of quantum computers ever assembled, they aimed to create a resonance signal, a structured message, encoded in energy patterns that mirrored the ship's own field. It was a gamble. If they failed, the signal could be absorbed, destroyed, or even trigger a defensive response from the Dreadnought. But it was the only option. As the team prepared the transmission, fleets that had once been paralyzed began to respond in small ways. Systems flickered to life. Engines hummed. Communication stabilized. It was not direct control, but a sign that the Dreadnought, a suppressive influence, could be engaged in some manner. Humanity realized for the first time that the ship might not be inherently hostile. It was a test of intelligence, a measure of response, a puzzle to be solved rather than a battle to be fought. The moment arrived. The resonance signal was broadcast toward the Dreadnought, a carefully calculated pattern designed to interact with the ship's energy field. For minutes, nothing happened. Human eyes turned to the sensors, watching the massive silhouette of the warship as it hovered silently. Then gradually subtle changes appeared. Lights along the hull flickered, energy readings shifted, and the oppressive field began to relax. It was working. Dreadnought had responded. It was as if the ship recognized the intent of the signal, understanding that humanity was not trying to attack but to engage. Slowly, the field of suppression weakened, and the immobilized ships in orbit began to move again. Fleets regained coordination. Colonies re-established communications. Humanity was not defeated, it was negotiating survival. As the Dreadnought stabilized in orbit above Earth, a transmission was received not in words, but in structured energy patterns. Dr. Torres's team interpreted it. "You have understood. You have passed." The Dreadnought then shifted its course away from the inner planets, moving silently back toward the outer systems, leaving humanity to rebuild and recover. Its purpose had never been conquest. It had been demonstration, a warning of what could happen to any species unprepared for the true scale of the Empire's technology. If you want to see more stories of humanity, facing impossible odds and discovering the power of intelligence and courage, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Now, because the universe holds many more secrets that only the boldest minds can survive. In the aftermath, humanity reflected on what had happened. Entire civilizations had witnessed the arrival and passing of a warship that could have destroyed them with a thought. And yet survival had come not through weapons, but through ingenuity, observation, and understanding. Leaders spoke of new alliances, new strategies, and a renewed commitment to exploration and scientific discovery. The Dreadnought became a symbol, not of fear, but of potential. It showed humanity that the universe was vast and dangerous, but that thought, creativity, and reason could achieve what raw power could not. Humanity had learned a lesson that no war could teach, that survival depended on the ability to adapt and understand forces far beyond one's immediate control. As the ship disappeared into the outer rim, the solar system returned to its rhythm. The stars glimmered as they always had, but now humanity watched them with new eyes, aware that the galaxy contained wonders and dangers alike. One ship had challenged them, and one species had risen to meet it, not with violence but with intelligence. And if you want to continue exploring these incredible cosmic adventures and discover what other challenges humanity might face among the stars, subscribe to my YouTube channel today, because the story of survival, courage, and discovery has only just begun.